it's a very difficult task to win a Formula One World Championship or even a single Grand Prix event. There are no guarantees that if a team surrounds itself with the most clever race engineers, quickest drivers, finest equipment, best mechanics, all tied together with a huge budget, that victory will naturally come their way. The competition is fierce, and total success is separated from zero results by a fine line of effort and luck. Since 1960, Lotus, Ferrari, McLaren, and Brabham have been the most consistent winners. Very rarely does a team totally dominate an entire season, but McLaren International has claimed that distinction for 1984 by establishing the finest single-season result record in the history of modern Grand Prix racing. They will capture both championships for drivers and constructors with an incredible 10 wins for 14 starts to date. This European Grand Prix in Nürburgring could decide which of their drivers will take home the crown. We talked to the team about how it all came right. Managing Director, Creighton Brown. When you and Ron Dennis joined forces under Project 4, did you ever think that you'd end up having the most successful season in the history of Formula One?
The answer to that, John, is that when we joined forces, we always intended and expected to run a highly successful team and eventually to get into Formula One. But I don't think anybody can ever expect something like this. I mean, this year has been exceptional by any standards. We're very fortunate that it's turned out that way, but you can't predict this kind of thing, however hard you work towards it.
The first effort was actually in Formula 2, correct?
Yes, when we first joined forces at the end of 1978, we'd both been running successful Formula 2 teams. In '79, we won the British Formula 3 Championship. We were by far the most successful team in Formula 2. We won the World Pro Car Series with Niki Lauda driving a BMW M1. We really had a clean sweep, and that really springboarded us into the Formula One project, which we then undertook for 12 months or 18 months ahead.
Well, how did that merger actually come together then? Moving from Formula 2 into Formula One, it's still quite a change.
Yes, it is, and it was, but the reason that it turns out was that we'd already made a decision to do it, and just shortly after we made the decision, we were very fortunate to manage to grab John Barnard before he was grabbed by somebody else. He was just coming back from the United States from producing and designing the fabulously successful Chaparral Indy car, and he decided to come back to England, and we managed to get hold of him before anybody else did. And that's really when it really did take off, because we gave John the very simple brief to design and build the ultimate Formula One car with no holes barred, complete clean sheet of paper.
Back in those days, Creighton, I can remember a lot of press people bringing out the point that you were sponsored in Formula 2 by Marlboro, and then you ended up in a Marlboro McLaren team. How important was that aspect?
Well, obviously it was important, but it's fair to say, I think, that originally we were intending to get into Formula One anyway and go it alone. I suppose ultimately the amalgamation to form McLaren International with Team McLaren as it then was very much a marriage of convenience for both sides, and it served a very useful purpose. Their strengths were our weaknesses and vice versa, and I think it was beneficial for all sides, and Marlboro too in the end, that this should come about.
So the very first group were you and Ron and John Barnard, Tyler Alexander and Teddy Mayer, all
That's
working
right.
together.
Absolutely, and I like to think that then and now we do our absolute utmost always to uphold the tradition and the standards that Bruce McLaren himself set when he first formed the company, and we're very conscious of that, and it's nice now to know that we've managed to pull off another championship, and for Bruce, I'm sure he would be happy with it.
I think he'd be very proud of this season. The car itself, the P4, it was quite revolutionary when it first came out with the first carbon fiber chassis.
Yes, it was. Nobody had ever built a Grand Prix car or any race car out of carbon fiber, and there were a lot of people who looked at what we were doing when the car appeared, who thought that we were really out on a limb and probably weren't doing it right. But John Barnard, whose idea it was, of course, was completely convinced right from day one that it was the correct way to go. And all I can say is that events have very much proved him right. If you look around the current Grand Prix paddock, you'll find that almost without exception, the cars are built out of carbon fiber as far as certainly the monocoque's concerned.
How did the TAG turbo motor deal come about?
There was one company that nobody had approached at the time who probably had more experience of producing turbo-powered engines than anybody else in the world, and of course that was Porsche. So we in fact opened discussions with Porsche, and to cut a long story short, they agreed to build us an engine, but obviously as a commercial customer, and then it was up to us to finance it. I'm very happy to say that TAG eventually picked up the whole program, and the TAG Turbo P01 is their first turbo engine, and the association between them and Porsche and ourselves, I think, again, has borne wonderful fruit this year.
The last thing to get together then were the drivers, and again, the best motor, the best chassis, you must have the best drivers. Going back to the press statements in '82 when you took on Niki Lauda, a lot of people think that you were taking quite a risk picking him up straight out of retirement.
For anybody who doesn't know Niki, they might well think that, but when you do know him, you realize that with Niki almost anything is possible, because as a person he has such extraordinary strength of will and determination. When he decided to come back, at that point, I think certainly Ron and I knew without any doubt at all that he'd get the job done in the end. As events turned out, he won his third Grand Prix after his return, which by any standards is a quite remarkable result.
But you grabbed Alain Prost like lightning when he became available at the end of last year.
You have to be quick-footed in this game, John, as you well know, and when Alain did become available, it was a question of, as you say, grab him quick. And I'm very happy that we did, because this year I think that the way that Alain and Niki have worked together is exceptional.
Having two #1 drivers in the team, how much pressure does that put on the whole organization?
Funnily enough, John, I think it puts less pressure ultimately, because pressure is the wrong word. I think it engenders greater enthusiasm and greater effort on everybody's part. But I have to say that having two drivers of the caliber of Niki and Alain together only helps us in every single way.
It's going to be tough to have 10 Grand Prix victories next year. People are trying to catch up to you, and over the winter everyone's going to be even copying your design more.
We're acutely aware of that, John, but all I can say is that we're going to be out there trying harder than ever to stay on top next year.